Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? It's nice to see everyone. I'm Anthony Crowell. I'm the Dean and President here at New York Law School, and we're so honored to welcome you and to celebrate the Law Department and all of you as the recipients of the Center for New York City Law's Civic Fame Award. Congratulations. I'm pleased to be joined by our board chair, Arthur Abbey, from the class of 1959 today, staunch advocate and ardent supporter of the Law Department. And this wonderful ceremony today is taking place in Abbey Hall, named in his honor. And so we are so thrilled to be able to celebrate you here. I'm also joined by my dear friend and colleague, Professor Ross Sandler, who many of you know. Ross is the director and founder of the Center for New York City Law, and Arthur and Ross will help present the award in a few minutes. I want to thank Acting Corporation Counsel Muriel Good-Trufant, Managing Attorney Eric Eichenholz, Director of Legal Recruitment Lily Evans, and Director of Professional Development June Wittershine for working with us to organize this event today and to bring out so many of you to celebrate this recognition. We regret that Muriel can't be with us because of a previous engagement, but she is with us in spirit. I also want to recognize the former corporation counsels who are here today and will share some remarks with us soon. They include my friend and former colleague of 10 years, Michael Cardozo, as well as 3 successors, all of whom I've had the honor and privilege of working with: Zach Carter, Jim Johnson, and Judge Sylvia Hines-Radix, who also was our 2004 commencement honorary degree recipient. I should say 2024, just this year. We're also joined by Asim Rahman, who is the Commissioner of the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings and a Chief Administrative Law Judge for the city. And he's the former Chief of Staff at the Law Department under Jim Johnson and is currently a distinguished adjunct professor here at the law school. We're also joined by Steve Lewis, who retired last year as Executive Assistant Corporation Counsel for Legal Counsel and Chief of the Legal Counsel Division. He now serves as Distinguished Fellow in State and Local Government Law here at the Law School and Counsel to the Center for New York City Law. And while today is a day to celebrate the indispensable work and role of the Law Department, this is a very special occasion for our school community as well. As New York's law school, as we call ourselves, for the past 133 years, our alumni have always been well represented in the Law Department's ranks, which has only grown in the last few years, where our graduates are among the most well represented in the newest ACC classes. That's a testament to the Law Department being the best place to do public service lawyering, and it sets a foundation for long careers in public service, whether at the Law Department or elsewhere in government. I know firsthand how important the work is and how much the work of city government and the lives of nearly 9 million New Yorkers depends on all of you. My own career started at the Law Department. I began as an ACC in the tax and condemnation and legal counsel divisions, which completely shaped my professional trajectory and approach to lawyering throughout my career, including serving as Mayor Bloomberg's counsel for more than a decade. I also met my spouse, as I know many of you have built families from the Law Department. I met my spouse, David Rohde, at the Law Department. We will soon celebrate our 26th year together. And he is currently the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of the Housing Authority. We don't stray far. I think both of us, most of our careers have been in a 6-block radius. And while I was at City Hall, my appreciation only grew for the critical importance of the Law Department, as so much that we wanted to do necessarily relied substantially on the counsel and work of its lawyers and staff. The exemplary, and I must say inspirational professionalism, inimitable expertise, and highly competent and stable leadership of the Law Department over so many years are what make it a model for other law departments globally. Indeed, what happens in New York matters everywhere. You are the unsung heroes, whether it is in the daily work you do side by side with city agencies, or during times of crisis, where the Law Department is as critical to the response as our emergency services. That's why right now it feels so right to honor the Law Department with the Civic Fame Award. The award was originally conceived by Professor Ross Sandler, founder of our Center for New York City Law, as I said, as well as a former commissioner of the New York City Department of Transportation. The award is named after the gilded statue that stands high atop the Municipal Building and overlooks the Civic Center. As you can see, this is Civic Fame. The statue was created in 1913 by sculptor Adolph I. Civic Fame carries a 5-section crown representing the 5 boroughs and a shield and laurel branch representing victory and triumph. During this period, when Civic Fame was put atop the Municipal Building, the city was led by 3 New York Law School graduates who, in succession, served as mayor. This included Mayor John Peroy Mitchell, the class of 1902, Mayor John F. Hyland, class of 1897, and Mayor Jimmy Walker, class of 1904. Mayor Mitchell was known as the boy mayor because he was only 34 years old at the time of his election, originally shot to fame through his anti-corruption investigations as an assistant corporation counsel at the City Law Department, and later as Commissioner of Accounts. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jimmy Walker, who through his scandalous and rampant corruption helped create a full employment plan for government ethics lawyers that continues to this day. And I would say he would probably receive the Civic Infamy Award. Most importantly, though, I mention this history because it powerfully demonstrates how our 2 institutions, New York Law School and the Law Department, have been linked together for 133 years, and we have contributed in countless ways to making New York the greatest city in the world. And the Civic Fame Award is a recognition of those who have made significant and long-term contributions to the civic life of New York City. Previous recipients include history-making civic leaders, including the late Mayor David Dinkins, Stan Bresnoff, Claire Schulman, Mary McCormick, and of course, the Law Department's very own Jeff Friedlander, who was one of the first to receive the award. And as I was telling Asim just a few minutes ago, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings was also an award recipient. So it is absolutely fitting that the entire Law Department received this recognition this year, and we are honored to help showcase your impact in our city. I'm also excited to share some news. In addition to the award, NYLS and the Law Department will partner in the next year to host a symposium focused on, and the title will be The City's Lawyers, Leadership and Law in Times of Crisis. As part of this, we hope to have speakers write formal law review articles or personal reflections for inclusion in a bound volume of the New York Law School Law Review, dedicated exclusively to this topic. And with that news of doing more good work together, I would now like to ask the founder of our Center for New York City Law and the creator of the Civic Fame Award, Ross Sandler, to come up and add his perspectives. Ross.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I'm happy to be here, and I congratulate all of you. I love looking at Civic Fame, although I don't think she was meant to be looked down upon. She was meant to look up to. But when I first heard the name, I thought that has to be the name of an award, civic life, civic importance, and then fame for the work that people do. So we started the award, and I'm so glad we did. I came to New York Law School 31 years ago after serving in the administration of Mayor Edward I. Koch, first as an assistant at City Hall and then as Commissioner of Transportation. And I came through those years to really love the work and to respect the wonderful people who work for the city, particularly those who make careers working for the city. The faculty of the law school at that time wanted to start a center, and they asked me to do it, and I thought that the center should focus on New York City, and we agreed to do that. A key goal of the Center for New York City Law was to recognize the good and often heroic efforts that city workers do to make this city what it is. And it sought in 2 ways to go about that. First, the Center for New York City Law sought to be a constructive voice on the issues and challenges faced by the city. And second, the center sought to work with city workers directly to make things even better. These goals led the Center for New York City Law to create publications like City Law and City Land, and then the administrative website, City Admin, and we created the successful city law breakfasts, which now number 192. But most importantly, from the start, the Center for New York City Law partnered with city agencies, especially the law department. But we also partnered with the planning department, the Conflicts of Interest Board, and the Tax Commission to present CLEs that were relevant to city workers and to the lawyers and others who work with the city, and to add transparency and good information on all of those significant activities. It was in 2015, however, that the center, with Dean Anthony Crowell, created the Civic Fame Award as a major function of the Center for New York City Law. Today, we honor the law department with the Civic Fame Award. One of the ways that we worked with the law department was when Michael Cardozo was the Corporation Counsel, and he commissioned a wonderful history of the law department written by NYU Professor Bill Nelson, who was my classmate. And we then, after that, had a symposium, which I commend to you, both the book and the symposium, on the history of the law department and issues associated with the law department. But I bring it up because Professor Nelson in the book wrote that the Corporation Counsel and the law department has two intertwined but separate roles. The Corporation Counsel and the law department act as lawyers for a client, the city of New York, but also as advisors to a political actor, the mayor. And every corporation counsel has had to determine how much emphasis the law department would give to each of those separate roles. New York Law School, by this presentation today, acknowledges just how well the Corporation Counsel and the law department have managed to successfully navigate these two separate purposes. And I, with New York Law School, congratulate you from the law department and all your colleagues at the law department who have made the law department the great institution that it is. Thank you.
Civic Fame Award from New York Law School presented to the attorneys and staff of the New York City Law Department in recognition of their contributions and courageous leadership throughout New York City's history. 2024. I'd like to thank you, Dean Crowell, and the faculty and the Center for New York City Law for this prestigious honor that you have given us at the Law Department. It is an honor to be here today on behalf of our acting corporation counsel, Muriel Good-Trufant, to accept this Civic Fame Award. Muriel wanted to be here today, but unfortunately she was not able to make it. But it is her honor, as well as our entire office's honor, to accept this award. And before I say some remarks, I also want to welcome my law department colleagues, alumni, and distinguished guests. We are honored to have multiple former corporation counsels here. Judge Sylvia Hines-Radix will be joining us shortly. And we have Jim Johnson, Zach Carter, and Michael Cardozo. It means a lot to us that you have all come and taken the time to be with us and to deliver remarks on this special day. I also want to give a special welcome to our Summer Honors Program interns, because we're here today to honor them as well and welcome them to the Law Department. We're celebrating them today, and they represent our future at the Law Department. So welcome, a quick round of applause for our summer interns. The Civic Fame Award recognizes those who have made significant and long-term contributions to the civic life of New York City. Most New Yorkers don't fully realize the extent to which the law department has such a significant impact on civic life here in the city. But day in and day out, the dedicated attorneys and support professionals at the law department litigate countless cases, provide invaluable legal counsel to city officials, and help resolve some of the thorniest and most intractable legal dilemmas
that are faced, I would say, within the city, but probably also in the country. Many key legal precedents have come out of the city and the operations of city government. And those of us who have been at the law department, especially those who have been here for a while, are witness to the tireless public service and the tremendous benefit the law department's work has for the people of New York City. What may not be as visible to the average New Yorker, though, is the breadth of our impact on civic life. Whether it's a new park along the riverfront, a new stadium, a change making better the way the city delivers services, or all important reforms to policing, the law department almost invariably plays a central, although sometimes quiet, but critical role in making our lives better in all aspects of our civic life. As Dean Crowell just announced, the New York Law School will be holding a symposium on the law department serving the city in times of crisis. And these challenging times, the most difficult of times, are when the law department has been at our best. During 9/11, in addition to providing a great deal of necessary legal advice to work with the emergency management response and rebuilding, law department attorneys were stationed out on a pier with laptops, giving legal counsel to some of the victims of 9/11 families who needed it. During the COVID pandemic, our office was relied on throughout city government as a legal, moral, and ethical compass. Jim will probably remember a lot of the questions that came in weren't purely legal ones, but people really looked to us as a guiding light, and especially so during the dark times because COVID hit this city quickly and very significantly to start the pandemic. And finally, when the recent surge of asylum seekers challenged New York City to find a way to welcome a large number of new, unexpected people in our city, but staying true to our values as New Yorkers, the law department was again the guiding light. We used the law to help the city manage, adjust, and adapt during this critical time. During all these times, and even in good times, the law department serves as an institutional backbone of the city government to guide the city through crisis and challenge. And the only way it is able to accomplish that goal is through the dedicated attorneys and support professionals who did difficult work tirelessly during long hours, often without credit or reward. And it was only through their hard work that we have been able to achieve and accomplish as we have. And we have risen to meet all of the challenges the law department has faced. We have also been very fortunate to have a long line of talented leaders who have dedicated themselves to leading and strengthening the law department, who kept us on a path of excellence in good times and in bad. Michael Cardozo, joining the law department right after 9/11, and our longest serving corporation counsel, helped the law department articulate and understand its values, mission, and vision, and strive to make sure we all did everything we could to be the finest public law office. Zach Carter reminded us of the importance of seeking justice in our work and reminded us that the citizens of New York City, even when they were on the opposite side of the V in litigation, were also an important part of our client, the city of New York. Jim Johnson, although he probably didn't expect it when he came in, led our office through an unprecedented global pandemic, and he led with empathy and kindness, reminding us to be kind to others as well as to ourselves, because sometimes our sense of public duty during that difficult time required us to work to, and sometimes beyond, what we were capable of under those emergency circumstances. Georgia Pastana, who could not join us today, but I will say personally was such a wonderful mentor to me, both before and during her tenure as Corporation Counsel, led the law department during the aftermath of COVID. And those of us who were here during that time know that as we're working on in-person return to the office and other issues about getting the city running, sometimes we're confronted with more challenging legal questions than during the teeth of the pandemic. And Georgia helped lead the city through that time. And finally, Judge Hines Radix led us through the challenges caused by a surge of migrants to our city and served throughout her tenure as Corporation Counsel as a strong voice for ethics and common sense. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also say Judge Hines Radix helped us earn well-deserved salary increases and made sure that the law department's pay once again became comparable with the pay of other public law offices. And finally, I would be remiss, even as I'm going through corporation councils, if I did not mention, as Dean Crowell said, another former Civic Fame Award winner, Jeffrey Friedlander, who served as our first assistant corporation counsel for over 25 years and contributed so much continuity and leadership to our office. These leaders, along with thousands of other professionals, our colleagues and our alumni, are what make the law department truly special. Even when people leave the law department to go elsewhere in their careers, such as Dean of New York Law School, for example, our alumni invariably talk about how the law department stands apart because of the collegial people who work here, because of the dedication of our law department family to public service and our collective desire to educate and lift up our junior attorneys and support professionals. For these reasons and many others, we are incredibly proud, grateful, and thankful to accept the Civic Fame Award from New York Law School.
Eric, those were terrific remarks. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to invite Michael Cardozo, the 77th Corporation Counsel, to come up and offer some reflections on his service and on the wonderful attorneys and staff at the law department.
Thank you. I want to thank New York Law School for presenting the law department with this very prestigious award. And I particularly want to thank Dean Crowell, a former member of the law department, and also Ross Sandler. Also, though, I think most importantly, I want to give a shout out to all the previous assistant corporation counsels and the present assistant corporation counsels and the corporation counsels themselves, some of whom are here today, for their hard and dedicated work that has resulted in the recognition that an office that was created more than 175 years ago to today was responsible for so much of what New York City has grown into, dealing with its various crises and helping the city advance to where it is today. I thought, from my perspective, that it would be useful to just recall for a couple of minutes what happened after 9/11 when I was corporation counsel. Although, in particular, I joined the office 3.5 months after the bombs fell on the World Trade Center, which, as I'm sure most people in this room know, was about a 2-minute walk. The World Trade Center was about a 2-minute walk from the law department. Everyone in the law department had to be evacuated. In fact, as I recall, Georgia Pastana, who became ultimately a corporation counsel and was then an assistant corporation counsel, was walking her son to work when one of the helicopters on one of the planes fell down right in front of them. But to think of what the law department had to do in the relatively brief time it had to react to what had happened that day. Everyone was evacuated from the office. Records were destroyed, the computers were destroyed, and they had to deal with emergencies beyond recognition. As Anthony said, a number of people were delegated to draft, drafts for death certificates, One of the people who was drafting those certificates, I recall, was someone named Anthony Crowell. Others were drafting emergency executive orders and emergency statutes. But I think when you think of what happened to the rest of the office, we were located into 44 different locations from the 100 Church Street that we were all occupying. We ended up in offices that law firms and other institutions gave to us to occupy. And the issues that we were confronting were amazing. There were roughly 10,000 lawsuits filed against the city in a short period of time. 10,000. Congress obviously got involved. There was a commission created, and we had to deal with the witnesses before the commission. We obviously had to deal with these thousands of lawsuits. But most significantly, the law department was one of the keys in negotiating with Congress what became the Zadroga bill, in which Congress created a $1 billion captive insurance company to insure the New York City and its contractors against these lawsuits. And even more importantly, created what is known as the Victims' Compensation Fund, where people who were injured as a result of 9/11, without the need to prove fault by the city, were entitled to get recovery through the process that was established. The result of those efforts, which continued not just for the 7 months that we're out of the office, but actually has continued to some respect even today, resulted in the city saving literally billions of dollars. Now, I could pause there because that is the claim involving the dealing of one of the most significant crises that the city had ever faced. But I think it's worth pausing for a moment to think about other things that the law department was responsible, often with city agencies, of dealing with for the city. The law department, working with the mayor and these agencies, developed policies and practices that made major additions to New York City. Let me give you just a few examples, which I'm sure you will all recognize. About 15 years ago, something called the High Line was created. I assume most of you know what the High Line is. Who was responsible for creating the High Line? There are a lot of people thinking about the concept. Who did the research as to who owned the railroad yards that were the High Line? The law department. Who did the negotiations that led to the creation of the High Line? The law department. That's just one example of the kinds of things that the law department did. We acquired Governor's Island. We mandated calorie disclosure by restaurants. And perhaps recognized worldwide, as a result of leadership by the mayor and significant work by the city law department, we enacted legislation and defended that legislation banning smoking in New York City restaurants, which for most of you here would not have known about that, but that was an everyday occurrence. There's more to that, though. There's more to that. Among the other things that the law department was a leader in, I wanted to just note, is in the area of diversity. One of the first female law students at Columbia Law School, graduating in the late 20s, was a woman named Edith Spivak. Edith Spivak became the first female assistant corporation counsel in the law department in the early 30s. Today, 56% of the law department is female. When I became corporation counsel in 2002, roughly little less than 20% of the law department was diverse. Today, it's over 30%. And the examples could go on. But I want to also go back even further. In addition to Edith Spivak being the first woman, the first female judge, Black female judge in the United States, Jane Bolin, started her career in the New York City Law Department in the early 1930s. The examples could go on, but the momentum of the Spivak, Bolin, and other examples, and obviously some much more recent. Peter Sherwood was a assistant corporation counsel in the early 80s, was the first Black corporation counsel. And very, very recently, the first woman who worked her way up to the top, and it was also the first Latinx corporation counsel, and Georgia Pestana was responsible for the law department. Think of that way things have progressed. I'm sure some of my successors who are going to speak may have their own examples. But in sum, I think it's important for everyone in this room and others to recognize that the law department, working with other city agencies and the mayor, made these changes happen, defended against billion-dollar lawsuits, and dealt with scores of the various crises the city has faced. I want to thank my predecessors and particularly my successors in continuing to lead the law department in dealing with these crises. And I'm sure that all of those from the Corporation Counsel's office today who are here would agree with me when I say, despite very, very hard work that was required to achieve these results, it was an honor to represent the city of New York and have a positive impact on the city. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael, for those very thoughtful reflections as well. Next, it is my privilege to welcome Zach Carter to the podium.
First, I have to start with an apology. First, for my tardiness in arriving and my informality. Trust me, in my luggage, which is right there behind me, there are 2 dress shirts, which I did not have time to put on. If it weren't for a desperate call from June, who caught me in my Uber on my way to the Roxy Hotel, which I thoughtfully reserved because it would be within walking distance here, because Anne Marie is no longer my secretary, who was in charge of making sure that I was in the right place at the right time. I somehow had calendared this for 6 o'clock. I came very close to addressing an empty room. So it is the thing I miss most in retirement. Anne Marie, you want to come work for me at home?
That looked like a no.
Yeah. Who asked you, Jim? Actually, I owe a long-term apology to Jim, though maybe as he reflects on it now, I'm anxious to hear his remarks. I helped talk him into taking the job and succeeding me. I could not predict that it would be in the middle of a pandemic and that he might be in the office by himself on a lot of days. But I think I'm sure he came to enjoy the job as much as I did. Dean Crowell, Ross Sandler, everybody associated with this great law school. First of all, I think that the law school itself deserves recognition for years ago having appreciated the fact that the study of New York City government is worthy of specialized attention in and of itself. Government does a lot of things well, fortunately, quite by accident, and not with a lot of as much forethought as the job actually demands. But I'm glad the law school appreciated the need to study New York City And I'm particularly grateful that the center is recognizing the law department and all people that work there. I've always been devoted to public service. I come by it honestly. My parents, who were not college educated, my father was a veteran of World War II. He actually went in on what's called D2, the second day of the Normandy invasion. Fortunately, he was not in combat, otherwise I would not be here. But he was a cargo checker on a cargo ship that delivered tanks and other necessary implements to the troops on the shore. My mother taught music in the community and taught me how to play piano, fortunately. But both of them were very dedicated to their communities. And in my father's spare time, because after he returned from the war, he came to work for the Pentagon as a clerk and administrator in the Department of the Air Force printing plant. And he worked there for 35 years, full time. But he devoted all the rest of his spare time that wasn't devoted to me, his only child, to the Civic Association, for which either he or my mother were president, because nobody else would take the job. They took the responsibility of getting the potholes filled, getting police protection, getting facilities for our school. I remember one example of my mother's initiative is that she actually wrote a letter to Vice President Hubert complaining about the state of our neighborhood playground at J.C. Null Elementary School. Fortunately, and maybe it wasn't that lucky because I think she had good political instincts, it was an election year. Hubert Humphrey showed up personally with a dump truck and sod, and for at least a week, our lowly elementary school ball field looked like the inside of old RFK Stadium. The only reason why it only lasted a week is they neglected to put in the thing that's really essential, a sprinkler system. So that grass went from green to brown in your typical Washington, D.C. Summer. But our family was forever grateful for Hubert Humphrey, a good old fashioned liberal, not a progressive, a good old fashioned liberal. One of the reasons why I think that this award is timely to the law department is because the law department is an important guardian in New York City of the rule of law and our democracy at the local level. And one of the reasons why it needs all the people who have worked at the law department, all the people who've led the law department to be jealous guardians of the rule of law and democracy is that there are always going to be pressures, countervailing pressures. Because frankly, when you want to get stuff done, democracy and the law can sometimes be damn inconvenient. Just ask any mayor that any corporation council has worked for. Not all the things they want to do are legal. They may be well-intentioned, they may even be sound policy, but not necessarily supported by the law or the Constitution. One thing I remember, one ongoing debate I would have with the mayor for whom I worked, who I think had a big heart when it came to people. When he saw homeless men on the street freezing in temperatures less than 32, he wanted to be able to just take trucks and scoop them off the street and take them to the shelters involuntarily, right? I think in our hearts, we may all have had that impulse from time to time. But grown human beings, adult human beings have a right of self-determination. There are rich people, silly rich people, I sometimes maintain, who spend tens of thousands of dollars every year climbing Mount Everest, right? Ascending to the height of a cruising 747 in temperatures far colder than you will ever encounter on the coldest winter in New York. And they do it voluntarily, and many of their bodies are still on the slopes of Mount Everest. You cannot demand that people who are only mildly, and not seriously mentally ill, you can't force them off the streets. And the mayor accepted that. Because of the mayor who I work for, because of who he was, and because of who most mayors have been during our lifetime, it may be grudging, but they appreciate the fact that the law department exists to occasionally tell them, no, you can't do that. But as I have reminded the mayor I work for, and I'm sure that Corp Council have before me, there are so many times when we have been able to help various mayors of various policies and philosophies and party affiliations, help them get to yes. I remember once describing one of our executives to Mayor de Blasio as my executive assistant for legal imagination, because we so often came up with solutions to vexing legal problems that seemed to defy a solution that was grounded in sound legal principles. So as one senior executive who used to work for me, who's not here today, but I want, and I don't want to mention her name, but I'm so glad she's leading the law department. This is not the Department of No, spelled N-O. It's the Department of No, spelled K-N-O-W. All right? This is like that applause. I should stop right now. But in all seriousness, I am very honored to have been invited to come today to be part of this celebration. As many of you know, I served as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, and then went into private practice for 14 deadly years. And I never thought that I would have a second act in public service to match being the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. And little did I know that I would have a job that exceeded that. With the finest lawyers I have ever had the pleasure to work with in public service or in private practice. And so many who have made the sacrifice by choice to make much less than they deserve out of their dedication, very often career-long dedications to this extraordinary work that we've all shared. So thank you very much to the law school, and thank you all of you for coming.
And next, Jim Johnson. We are very pleased to welcome you as well. You are our 79th Corporation Counsel.
Good afternoon. I know I'm third. Good afternoon. So when you come after Zach, dressed all in black, sort of a legal Johnny Cash, you don't want to necessarily correct the man in black, but Zach said he thought that I would grow to enjoy the job. I loved the job. And I see so many familiar faces, and it just fills my heart with a tremendous amount of joy. So to the Dean, Professor, Mr. Abbey, thank you for all of what you've done for the law and for New York City. And this recognition to these phenomenal unsung heroes. And that is a word that is not only appropriate, it is timely. And I actually think that the prize should be retired after this because this is a peerless group. So thank you. Now, one of the things I've learned is that when you start pretty much at the end, you should start close to the end. So I'm going to be relatively brief, and I want to talk to you about really three things. One, I'll share a few remarks about something that many of you know all too well, which is the time of the pandemic, which really constituted, I would say, 80% of the time that I served as corporation counsel. And I will talk about the pandemic, racial reckoning a little bit. I want to spend more time talking about the quiet crises that dealing with the larger crises engendered. And then I want to spend a little bit of time, I won't be political, but I want to talk about polarization and the importance of the law department in this moment in our city's history and our nation's history. So those are my three things. So thing one, the pandemic. Zach told me a couple of things as he spoke to me about the job. He said, no day is ever dull. And he said, and that was true. He told me that you will work with some of the best lawyers. And I know you've been at Debevoise, and I know you've been at the Treasury Department, and you've been an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. You will work with the best lawyers, some of the best lawyers ever, most creative, when you go to the law department. Zach was right. And he said that you will be stretched. And I was put on the rack, Zach. And he was right about that too. So had no idea. Kate reminded me that in the early days I'd sat down with her and I had a whole bunch of things that we were going to do in connection with public relations and how we could work with the platform that the law department had to teach people more about a variety of things. And then June and I had some ideas about how we were going to put in place SMART goals. And we're going to go through a whole, maybe even a KPR, KPI, key performance indicators effort. And, these were all the things that we were going to do about that. And we had plans, and I sat down with the mayor and he said, what are the 4 things you want to do? And I said, 4, I have 8, right? Well, then life happened while we were making all those plans. And I carry a photograph with me, which the title should be Hubris, because it was a picture of the mayor and his senior team, including me, on March 10th in a conference room in which we were demonstrating to the city that we knew what was going on. That picture was taken from the New York Times, and I put it on my phone to keep with me. And anytime I think I'm so smart, so I look at it every day. Why do I call it the hubris picture? Because there is not a single mask being worn in this room. You had most of the senior crisis responders of the city basically sitting on each other's laps. We were not elbow to elbow. We were almost cheek to cheek. We could have used music, actually. And there was no hand sanitizer on the tables. And 2 weeks later, we had to actually credibly, at least try to be credible, in trying to explain to the city that not only can you not sit next to each other, you can't come into the office. You can't go on the street. You cannot be in a room eating with anyone else because you could die. Hubris. We had no clue. We needed to get respirators. Do we have enough respirators? What is a KN95 6000 mask anyway? And so we had folks from the law department trying to figure out a way to negotiate with folks in China to get what we needed to do the task. We had no clue. But the law department figured it out. One of the things that Zach didn't tell me was that this was the place of the no-look pass. And I'm not going to reference the Celtics last night, but we very quickly became a well-oiled machine because we already were a well-oiled machine. It was simply repurposed to the crisis at hand. And there will be other crises, but the tools that the law department had honed over decades through many corporation councils were the tools that came to play. And they were the tools that were going to stand us in good stead throughout the entire time of the pandemic and beyond. We didn't get it right all the time, but we tried. We drew together, and I really do mean all of us, because there was service at every single level. We drew together the general counsels of all the agents to become a massive, smart, powerful, effective engine that was answering the sort of questions that Eric said. They were not just legal questions, they were moral questions, and they were just like, what makes good common sense? It's like, remember that picture where we're all sitting there with each other? That wasn't good common sense. Do the opposite of that in every single thing that we try to do. And it made a difference, and it will make a difference going forward. And for that, I think that it is not hyperbole to say that the role of the law department in all of its ways was heroic, absolutely heroic. Which takes me to, there were two other crises that we were dealing with. I won't touch on them very long because there's a third that didn't get press. One, dealing with racial reckoning, both across the city, taking a look at everything that the city did that had been advancing inequality and try to retract that. Dealing with issues of police response to the George Floyd protests, and then dealing in a quieter way with the attacks on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, which were affecting the office as well. And some of those were not just in the city. Issues around racial reckoning were within the office. And the same tools that the courts rely upon when we show up in court, honesty, probity, integrity, compassion, those came to play as we dealt internally with difficult conversations. We didn't run away from it. We had on Zoom, and there is nothing worse than a difficult conversation with someone on Zoom where the camera is really tight on their face and you can see every twitch of their cheek. But that's what we did. And that's what I know you will continue to do and to model going forward. So what's the quiet crisis? Eric mentioned the notion of treating each other with empathy. I have never been in a place, ever, where folks came together and to create a way to take care of each other the way the law department did during the time of crisis. We suffered tremendous losses, family losses. There were more than 80, probably more than 90 folks within the office who were touched in their immediate family by a loss due to COVID. We were still representing the city, still answering difficult, novel questions about what the right thing to do, and many of us were taking care of children, taking care of family members who had been afflicted with COVID, taking care of spouses who were suffering, taking care of parents who were suffering from COVID and other things. And somehow, this group did phenomenal legal work and managed to figure out a way to do it and treat each other with decency. There was never a moment when I thought, okay, somebody's going to get thrown under a bus here because somebody else needs to get something done. It just wasn't the way we rolled. And for me, as many of you know, I now work in a church. It is one of the world's most well-resourced churches. I now work in a church And some of the things I learned at the law department, I took to the church to help it understand how we can do a better job of taking care of each other. But that was the quiet thing. People didn't get a lot of note for that, but it was the most vital thing. Anne Marie and Maritza keeping me on task from home. When I walked in at 4:07, and I looked at Anne Marie, and she was on her cell phone texting somebody, and I said, "Anne Marie, I'm here." But we kept it going. So, my last word, keep on. We have young lawyers here, young folks that are interns. This summer, learn from the people that are, most of you are in the back rows, I've noticed. I'm just guessing. So most of the people that are in front of you, both temporarily and physically right now, are people from whom you should learn. And then whether or not you come back to the law department or go elsewhere, what the law department has needs to go elsewhere. Because from my perspective, there were many values that we had, but the fundamental one, the thing that made the difference, is that we always kept in mind the common good, first with each other, and then for the city. In a time where people are prepared to fight over everything and turn it into a culture war, where you have public officials, we have like bipartisan criminal trials in New York City right now. We had one at one point. We had a New Jersey senator, and we had a former president of the United States on trial for criminal conduct, fraud, less than half a mile from each other. There's a huge doubt in the integrity of public institutions. Approval is so low. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being who you are. Young folks, learn from them and take it either in careers here or elsewhere, because the world needs what the law department has been offering for centuries, and particularly for the last 20 years or so. So the award is terrific. It is timely. It is necessary. It is more than well-deserved. I'm grateful that my colleagues, my former colleagues, my predecessors are all here to experience this. And know that going forward, anything that I can do to help what you all are doing, I will do. Because I said in correcting Zach, I loved this job.
Thanks so much, Jim. That was terrific. And I think it's safe to say that everyone who's here loves their job at the law department, correct? And that infectious enthusiasm is what helps make that so. So thanks. And next, we have another wonderful speaker. The 81st Corporation Counsel, Judge Sylvia Hines Radix, is here with us. And as I said earlier, we had the great privilege of bestowing upon her an honorary degree just a few weeks ago at our commencement ceremony at the Beacon Theater. Judge?
To our phenomenal dean, and to all of you here gathered, and all of my former colleagues in the law department, a pleasant, Alice, how are you? Pleasant good afternoon to all of you. Now, you see, I have no written notes because I just came to watch all of you get this amazing award that you've given to us. And I could feel a tinge of nostalgia as I look around the room and look at all of you at the law department, and I miss you. It was a good 2.5 years. I listened, Jim, unfortunately, you're the only person that got to hear all of your remarks, but I listened to you and I thought about the things that you were saying. And I tell people when I start talking about the law department that I see the law department as the heart of New York City. It is the place where everything beats and where the blood flows from. I'll tell you, when I first started liking the law department, interesting. I got to the Supreme Court and sat as what we called in the court system, the city judge. I remember meeting Michael there because he came in to visit. And I shouldn't be telling things out of school, but judges didn't like getting assigned to the city part because it was a lot of work. It really was. It's one of those parts where every day there's a huge calendar. There's really no downtime, the same way we work at the law department. So judges would hope that they got a trial part where at least, there was some downtime. So one of my colleagues was supposed to have been sitting in City Park, and he had more political clout than I did. And he got it switched. So I ended up in the City Park. Good for me. Really, it was one of the best times on the bench. For one thing, it gave me an opportunity to mentor some young people who came in from the City Park, and to make sure that they understood what their licenses required of them, and that you couldn't be cavalier with the court, that you didn't just say what you wanted to, but you made sure that what you did was ethical. And that was when I started to fall in love with the law department, apart from the fact that you touch almost every area of the law. And it was a teaching moment for a new judge in the Supreme Court. And so that continued throughout, and then I met, of course, people from the law department at Bar Association events. And then I came to this job. Having left the appellate division, I want to ask the former corporation counsels, I'm like, if you hadn't kind of gone to or sat in some place where you saw so many different areas of the law, when you got to the law department, wasn't that something that would blow your mind? It was. The amount of work that's done at the law department, the different areas that we touch. But I think more significantly, the fact that we get to see a group of people who are the hardest working people that you can see, people who really are committed to what they do and are committed to the city of New York. And if I don't leave anything with you when I leave this podium, I want you to remember that the city is your client. A lot of people don't understand that. The city is your client, and it is important that you ensure that you protect the interests of the city, because then you protect all of us. You will find folks that may not be happy that you do that, but that's your role. And so some of the things that I am proud about and the changes that I was able to effectuate while I was there, I am forever happy that we got an ethics department, because I think one of the big challenges for me when I got there is that we had an ethical issue. And then I realized, where's Karen? Is she here? Karen and I would be in these little huddles, and we decided when I said, there's no way that this one woman could do all of the things that are being thrown at us every day. And so Karen, the struggles and finally the division, I think she would have passed out when I finally told her that, yeah, we got it done. And then, of course, Jim was talking about COVID. When I started, it was towards the end of COVID, and everybody was just about coming back. And folks were saying, wow, we didn't know that we ever did this amount of work because of where we were. But then we got hit. And Cheryl's looking at me because I still dream at night about Callahan and the migrant crisis. And I think for me, if I were to think of there were so many significant things, but if I were to think of the most significant chapter, it would have been the migrant crisis. And I think that if people use this well, that it would have and can be one of the most defining and well-defining pieces of this administration. Because irrespective of what you hear in the newspapers and what you see, I think we were able to do it right and to effectively ensure that a group of people who came to this country not knowing what they can do and what they can become, were able to be integrated into this city, and we didn't have people sleeping on the street. I woke up every day, Cheryl will tell you, it was 24/7. My poor husband, I guess if I didn't leave here, I guess I probably, I don't know, my husband, does that phone ever stop going beep, beep, beep at night? So, but the migrant crisis, and it still continues, and I think probably you will see some more of it because it is really a destabilization of the world and not just us. And you as you work will make determinations about whether we are. You heard some people say we're being punked as New Yorkers because people are using us. I didn't see it in that fashion. And that's a determination I guess you will have to make as attorneys as you make an evaluation. I think what we were finally able to do and to the stipulation that we were able to have to protect the city's interest. It was well worked out with us and legal aid and people who were really vested and were interested in this city. And people evaluated it to ensure that the city's interest financially and otherwise, that those interests were protected. So if I were to tell you the one thing that I'm proud of having sat in that seat, I would tell you that I was proud of what we were able to do finally with the migrant crisis. And of course, I am quite proud that I was able to do something with the salary structure at the law department. I got there, I took a look at it, and I started working on it from week one until I guess just about, when it finally happened just months before I left. But I think that for the kind of work that you do, you ought to be compensated accordingly. I know you didn't come to the law department to be paid what big law firms pay, but you certainly do better work than a lot of big law firms. And so to stop all of the attrition, and people poaching you every day. I mean, everybody's trying to grab our attorneys. Why do you think they're trying to grab our attorneys? They're trying to grab you because we train you well. And I heard, and I need to steal something from Jim again as I heard him talk about treating each other well. That is so significant. And that is one of the other things that I like about the law department, because I read all of the exit interviews, and I will tell you, overwhelmingly, you hear, I stayed at the law department because of the camaraderie, because we like each other, because we look out for each other.
And if you're working in an organization where you can say that about that organization, I think you're 90% towards the goal. And that is the law department. So before I get too emotional, I guess point 4, and should have been my point 1, was my ability to work with this dean and this law school. Anthony, you were so tremendously effective in whatever successes that I was able to accomplish, because every time I reached out and said to you, I need and we need at the law department, you were there. And I thank you and will never forget the good work that we were able to do together. And to the newbies, that's what we call you. I guess all the folks with the tags, right? You're the new class. So congratulations to what? The class of 2024, Eric? Congratulations to you. You read all the newspaper clippings and see all the things that we do and see what you can become. Because I'm telling you, you are at a good place. You have good people. You have brain thrust. I told folks who asked me about the law department, I said, the one thing I want you to know about the law department is if there is a legal way in the city of New York to hang drapes, somebody in the law department knows where it is. And I said, and I didn't say that to be trite, but I wanted you to understand the kind of knowledge that we have at that law department. And if I could single out June for a little bit, when we started doing a batch of programs in the law department, I guess I will think them up and then I'll say, we'll give it to June. And we were able to, the program that we did here with the bar retakers, we gave it to her and her group with John. They took it off and ran with it and made sure that it worked. And we were able to get 14 new lawyers with that program. So but I think for the dean and I, we were able also to hear from young people that we changed their lives. And that was an incredible piece. So I thank you again. Is that Maritza next to you, Anne-Marie? I was just going to talk about my incredible front room staff and all of those. And I looked up and saw Anne-Marie and didn't realize Maritza was there. Maritza left just before I did. Really nice to see you. It's really nice to be here with all of you and to thank you for the law department and to hope that you continue to ensure that that organization does the work that it is to do for the city of New York. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge. I think you underscored a real common theme that to be an effective lawyer and to be a successful lawyer, it starts with love and compassion and a great deal of commitment and loyalty to your client. And in this case, it's our great city. And I couldn't be prouder that New York Law School has bestowed upon the Law Department the Civic Fame Award. It's long overdue, I think, is what one conclusion can be from tonight. But I will say that we have a wonderful party for you all upstairs. It's a special night. We should all celebrate, be with one another, and appreciate all that we do for our city and all that we mean to one another. Because through strength and solidarity, we can achieve anything. Thanks so much for being here.